Hi! There we go. All right, cool. I want to liven this up a bit. It's the middle of the day. Everyone's had lunch. Let's fire things up a little bit. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for coming and joining this room. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And the fact that you guys are here because you care about something that's really, really important, which is the one thing we all have is our imagination. And it's funny because as I've been preparing for this and doing the Wellness Expo for the past 2 days and talking to people, this all kind of shifted and changed a bit. And I've been talking about imagination a lot and a lot of different aspects of it. And as I talk to people here, how many of you actively work out your imagination? Like consciously go, I'm going to go work out my imagination. Raise your hands. Okay, so a couple of you, right? No one really says that. They're like, I'm going to go work on my butt at the gym. Or I'm going to go work on something else, right? We don't treat it the same way, but why don't we? You know, it's kind of weird. Like, we should be. It's your imagination. It's in your brain. It's your thoughts. It's what you've been using since you were a kid. It's made you who you are today. Whether you think you use your imagination or not, you did. How did you decide what to wear? You had to imagine what you were going to look like with that pair of pants on or that shirt. You have to imagine how you're going to solve problems when you're driving in traffic, how you're going to handle different things. So your imagination resonates in a lot of different ways that a lot of people don't think about. And because of that, it's had a big effect on society and ourselves. There's a lot of really interesting research that's been going on about this. And it's something people just don't talk about. Like, I've never heard anyone say, oh man, I hurt my imagination today, or I haven't used my imagination in a while. Like, we don't talk about it. And that's why we're here. We're really to talk about it. That's why the whole campaign is to take it back. Because the thing is, we're not using it. How many of you out there work in a field where imagination is a key component of what you do? Raise your hands. Cool. All of you should have raised your hands. All of you should raise your hands. Every one of us uses it on a daily basis in some capacity with our jobs, in other areas. And what we found is that the imagination exists in kind of a finite line. And it can go really bad for you, or it can go really good. It's up to you to kind of control it. So the reason why I'm up here is because I work in the imagination field, is what we've kind of dubbed it. I've been working in television for over 18 years as a producer. I managed a rock venue on the Sunset Strip for about 5.5 years. And I created a thing called Audiojack, which we'll talk about later, which is essentially mainlining imagination into your brain. We're going to do a little example with that later to kind of have a little group activity. That's why you're wearing the blindfolds, but not over your eyes right now. Cool. All right. So that's good. I know some of you need a nap. So that's a little bit about it. But the whole thing is that we all want health. We want a better life. We want to be able to thrive and feel better about ourselves. And the imagination gives us that ability into it. And the imagination helps us battle stress and anxiety. We have these devices and we have these tools that we're using on a daily basis to make our lives better. We think, oh man, I'm on this social media, I'm doing all these things, I'm in touch with this. But what that's doing is just creating a form of stress and anxiety inside you. Yeah, there's good stress, there's bad stress, there's all these different elements of it. But what it's doing is, it's creating a problem that is affecting society in a large way. If you look back in a lot of the research, you start at about when the internet came out. All of a sudden, it's turned into this really kind of neat thing where you can, watch games and play games and do different things like that, interact with different people. And also we start getting news feeds and we start learning about the news in other countries and problems. And we start reacting to that. And I think a lot of it comes from, we're all good people. I believe that in some capacity. We're all born good. If you want to believe, Rousseau and the blank tabula rasa were born with a clean slate, or people are born innately bad, whatever. But I think people in general are good. I think everyone in this room is probably good and would do something. If someone fell down, most likely you pick them up instead of kick them. At least I hope. And so when we see that, when we start seeing things like, oh my God, the problem in Darfur, or we see, a landslide in this part of the world, or this going here, we want to help, we want to do that. And we're spreading our time in all these places. And it puts stress on your body. It puts stress on your mind. It creates anxiety. You may not be freaking out about it, but on a subconscious level, all that starts to add up. It adds up more and more and more, and starts building up and it gets inside your head. So the example I want to use is, this will be pretty interesting to see. How many of you use or have used Instagram? Raise your hands, okay? Now keep your hands up, wait, keep your hands up. Now here's the cool part. How many of you have used Instagram and looked at one photo and then turned it off? Right, not one of you. No one does that. No one goes, oh cool, done. We look through it again and again and again on Twitter, on Facebook, we're scrolling through. Now, each one of those is a whole story inside a picture. As they say, a picture tells 1,000 words. So if you're at the museum, you're walking along, you see a Monet, you stop and look, you infer, you react, you decide, you take time. Then you mosey on to the next one. You take time, you do that. A lot of time passes in that moment. When you're scrolling on Instagram, for most people, it's like boom, 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 right? It's really fast. So each time you're looking at that, you're going through inference. You're trying to infer what's going on. Oh, John's got a taco. Why didn't John invite me to have tacos? Is that a good taco? Where's he having the tacos at? All these things are happening in your head. Now, the next step, what do? Do I like this? Do I unlike it? Do I leave a comment? All those things are being processed each time you see an image. Then the next one, then the next one. You're making a conscious decision each time. That's putting stress on the brain. It's putting, what you're doing is you're taking information and it's running from the frontal lobe all the way back to your visual cortex. And if you look at it, like information goes from here, all the way back here, gets processed, comes back and does all that. We've done EEG scans and show how the brain fires. You can actually see it firing from front to back. And it's going from front to back. So imagine now, every time you're looking at a feed, you're taking in a bit of information, it's going, right? Like that's a lot, that's really intense. And you're putting that on yourself while you're doing other things. Most people are watching TV while they're watching TV now. You're watching a show, but then you're doing this and you're doing that. You're taking your brain and you're asking it to work incredibly hard. You're saying, I want you to go to the gym and run at top speed while lifting weights for an hour straight. And you're putting your brain through all this, plus dealing with whatever else is going on in your life, whatever kind of stress you're dealing with and other things that might be affecting you. So when you use your imagination, when you're dreaming, when you're in that kind of a state of mind, your eyes are closed, your brain fires from your visual cortex, from back here, from the occipital lobe, forward. The EEGs show it going forward and moving forward and going back up here, because this is where all our cognition takes place, up here in the frontal lobe. So your brain gets a chance to have a break from all that intensity, from all that stuff coming back, and it opens it up. It opens up your brain. I mean, it's not opening, but it's allowing you to expand. It's allowing you to think. It's allowing you to relax. It's taking all that stress and all that anxiety, all those issues that are being pushed this way to go back the other way. It's allowing you to open up, to clean your brain in a way. And that's the imagination. That's where the imagination lies. Yes, we know very little about the brain, but what we've tracked and shown is the way when things are firing, it's changing your space. It's changing the way your brain reacts to things. And the imagination can take things with, I guess an interesting way to kind of put this is that, you're dealing with this focus of news all the time. And I like using this as an example because it's different for all of us. Some people will see something and be like, oh, that's not important to me, but someone else is. But it's happening all the time. So you're taking information, you're looking at things, you're pulling it in. And it's causing all this anxiety. So the next thing what I want to do is I want to talk about the value of imagination. It's in a society where we're in this always on world. We're always being bombarded with these elements, these pieces. It really slows down our process to grow and to think for ourselves and to evolve, because the imagination is what helps us innovate and do all these other elements that are kind of driving society and driving humanity. And there's been this kind of shift of focus, not necessarily on imagination, but about mindfulness and meditation and focusing inward and learning how to handle those elements. And so what I want to do is I want to actually do an activity with you guys at some point here. And I think we're going to jump into that and then move into the next one. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an activity because I want you to understand the power of imagination. Then we're going to have a discussion and we're going to hang out. And I'm actually going to bring up a really amazing doctor that I've had the pleasure of working with and doing some more stuff down the line with. And I want to open this up to you guys as well. I want to hear from you, and we want to talk about this with our experts about how imagination fits into your life and how you can help change it. This isn't just a panel where I'm going to come up here and talk. I want you to participate with this. I want you to be, I want you to ask questions. I want you to be involved. So what we're going to do is we're going to do, while you have the blindfolds on your head, we're going to do an Audiojack. What it is it's a tool. It's an audio-based movie. You don't have to put them on yet. So when you listen to it, there's no words, there's no video, and there's no music. It's just sound design. It's hundreds of sound effects that are edited together to tell a story. We never tell you the actual story, so there's never a wrong answer. So it's like, you hear the wind and trees, and all of a sudden you hear feet. Your imagination kicks on. Are you in the forest? Are you in your backyard? That's up to you to decide. You're using your imagination, and it's a way of mainlining it and getting you to do active meditation. So we're going to do a quick activity, then we're going to talk about what's actually happening in your brain while this kind of thing is going on. The one I've chosen for you guys is a little action adventure, we'll say. It's going to sound awesome in here on the sound system. It's going to be a little loud. It has a bit of a sci-fi effect to it, so be ready to go along for the ride. Generally, people listen to them a couple times so they can brainstorm and create their story, but for time's sake, we're just going to go through it once. We're going to do a quick little activity with it, and then we're going to talk about what's going on in your head and how it actually may be crazy what you're imagining, but it's actually making you healthier because you're using your imagination in a mindful way. You guys on board? Yeah. Some people look kind of scared. You guys on board? Yeah. All right, great. All right, so put your blindfolds on. If you don't have one, let me know if you have some extras laying around. Cool. Everyone is ready to go. All right, we have some over here. Nice. Great. Don't worry, we will not rob you. All right, we need some more over here. Great. Cool. Everyone's getting theirs now. All right. So I'm going to play this bit now. Yeah. So I'm going to hit play here in a second. Everyone ready? So without further ado, sit back, relax, and it's about 4 minutes long. Here we go. Okay, you can take off your masks. Everyone's wallets are still there. Great. So now we get to have some fun. We're going to raise our hands a little bit more, then we're going to get into discussion. So first of all, I'd like to know, for those of you that had this experience, was it first person? It was you in it, you were looking through the lens with it. Raise your hand if that was an experience for you. Okay, cool. Now, raise your hand if it was third person, if you were looking at it from an objective, if it changed at all to that. Okay, so we got kind of a mix here. Now, we're going to go through a little bit of time and day. We're going to have some fun here. How many of you was it morning? Top of the day, morning. You can raise your hands. All right, I can't see everyone. All right, we got a couple of you out there. Nice. All right, now, how many of you was it like afternoon, like right now, like this time? Okay, cool. Evening, like dusk, like dinner time. All right, and night for anyone. Night. Okay, so you see, like we all heard the same thing, right? You're looking around, all the hands are going up, things like that. Your imagination is whatever you want it to be. And now, how many of you felt like really energized while you were listening to that? You were like, your head was going, things were going different places. Raise your hand. How many of you felt really relaxed? Nice, right? It's different for all of us. It's all our imagination. We can choose to push it however we want. All right. Anyone in a forest? Yeah. Anyone in a desert? Okay. Anyone in the jungle? I don't know. All right. Pretty cool, right? So our imagination is kicking off all these different things, but we all heard the same thing. And when you do that with something like this, you're allowing your brain and your visual cortex to get work. You're allowing your brain to fire from the back to the front. You're allowing yourself to enjoy the way the brain likes to work. You know, you're giving it that bit of like, just close your eyes, relax for a minute. In the middle of the day, take a break. You can do it with music. You can do it with anything else, but it's about giving your chance to kind of use your mind's eye if you want to look at it from that perspective.
I'm Bob Duke. I'm the head of music and human learning at the University of Texas at Austin, and I also teach in Dell Medical School at the Environmental Science Institute. I do a lot of different things in Texas, and I'm also one of the two guys on the NPR podcast, Two Guys on Your Head, that plays every Friday in Austin, Texas. That you should check it out if you're listening to that on Friday. You want me to start talking a little about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about this about why this is happening and how it.
You know, I was interested in Sarah and your response, and that it kind of stressed you out because you didn't get to do the story that you had planned, right? You know, I think most of the time, through most of the days, and I think David mentioned this earlier in his remarks, that we're reacting to things that we have to come to some solution to a problem or navigate some place to a destination or whatever it happens to be. And there aren't many times when you're not supposed to do anything in particular, right? I mean, this happens in school all the time. And many times I will go into schools and play not Audiojack, because I just learned about this in the past couple of days, but I would play music for children and who have been in music study, and all the children look at me like, what are we supposed to be doing? You know, what are we supposed to be doing? Because usually when you're in music class, you might remember in elementary school, when music comes on, you're supposed to draw something or make a line or say what the phrases mean and everything. What the hell is that about? So the idea that you're just taking time just to listen and experience something is not common. And I think what's unique about what David's created in Audiojack is that what's happening is sort of unpredictable, right? I mean, it's back to Sarah's trying to make a story, right? When you're trying to make something fit into something, then unpredictability is not a good thing. If you're in a place in your thinking where you're ready to say, you know, I'm just gonna just let this go and just see what happens, now it's a whole different level of attention, a whole different level of stress, and your body responds in a way that's very different when you have a task that you're trying to accomplish. I think, you know, one of the challenges about being imaginative is just taking the time to be still. You know, I mean, most people who think about, well, I want to be a creative person, almost all acts of creativity happen when people aren't intending to be creative. 100%. Almost all the times when you talk to people in the sciences who come up with some brilliant solution to a problem or some insight about the way the world works, almost all of those things happen when they're taking a walk and just listening to environmental sounds or doing other things. And I think, you know, in an era where we're kind of driven to do stuff and get stuff done and accomplish things because we got to do it now and by tomorrow and that kind of thing, we undervalue the amount that we accomplish when we're not trying to accomplish anything. And I think one of the beautiful things about this experience, and I listened to a couple of these that David's created over the weekend with his colleagues, and one of the things that's interesting about it is your memory does activate when you're hearing these different sounds. I mean, most people think of imagination in a way that isn't actually the way imagination works. I mean, most people think of imagination as something coming unbidden, fully formed, and it just came out of nowhere. But actually, all of our imagination comes from our memories. And as David was pointing out about when you're experiencing something that you've experienced in the past, there are networks of neurons that fire that represent the things that you've experienced in the past, and some cue, some aspect of what you're experiencing now activates some assembly of neurons that represent something. And all of us, probably the most bizarre experience of our own imaginations are dreams. Because when our brains are dreaming, there are no constraints, right? I mean, my mother can be flying the plane, and my son can be riding out there on the wing, and I can actually be a dog, and all those things can happen because my brain has no constraints, right? But really, all of the stuff that's coming, if you think about most of what happens in our brains when we dream, almost all those things have to do with familiar things that are put together in unfamiliar ways. And that's a beautiful way of thinking about how imagination works. It's not that we invent things out of whole cloth, it's that we're able to put things together in ways that we've not perhaps experienced before.
And so when you think about something like that, you think about, you know, being still and giving yourself time. That's why I wanted to do this activity, to give you guys all at least 5 minutes of just doing nothing. Because if you're out there, you're probably on your phone, you're talking to someone, you're looking for the next thing, you're waiting to hustle, you're waiting to do this. When you think today, you would have taken 5 minutes to do absolutely nothing and be still and be in the moment? You wouldn't have, right? You would have been just jamming away through your day. If you think about it, like we're supposed to sleep, what, 7 hours, 8 hours a day, something like that? So, well, for some of us. And so there's a chunk of your day.
Sure.
Then you got about 3 hours of your day doing, normal health stuff, eating, going to the bathroom, getting dressed, showering, all that stuff like that. You got about that driving to work. Then a good chunk of the day is spent at work. Then what's left in your day? You've got maybe 3 hours of free time. How many of you are taking advantage of that free time and be able to do that? And that's the point where you can allow your imagination to allow you to de-stress. And the really interesting thing about this is, how much does it cost to use your imagination?
So,
Nothing.
except one very expensive thing. It costs time.
Yes.
Right? It costs time.
5 minutes is
right.
very valuable. I mean, I would pay a ton of money for something like that. And the interesting thing about that is, like, it doesn't cost anything, but people want to take a pill to make themselves feel less stressed. They want to go do this. They want to go drink that, smoke this, and do whatever. And sure, that's fun and different things like that. But those elements are not healthy fixes for a long-term solution. Those are other problems. And then you have to pay for that. So guess what? That costs money. That creates stress. You're creating anxiety by buying the things that you think are helping you. And these elements of it, when you start deconstructing the business models behind them, you're putting yourself in these situations that you're just going to keep going in this cyclical fashion. So if you can find ways to engage your imagination, use your imagination, you have this wonderful tool. We all have it. It's right there waiting for you. It's collecting cobwebs. And the less we use it, the more we infer from the rest of the world, and we let other people tell us what the world is going to be. It is our world. We're in a room full of people, and in this event where everyone is creative in some aspect. They're innovators. There's people who want more out of their life. They want more health out of it. If we don't allow our imagination to happen, this kind of thing won't continue to go. There's no reason for you not to be using it, because it adds that element of it. Those parts of your brain that come together to allow you to use something like that, as opposed to using, a pill for this, and then there's a pill for your pill. These other elements you keep adding stress in your life.
The other thing I just want to add to it was about the time scale of this, because usually when we try to think about adding anything into our lives, whether it's exercising or, writing or calling people we don't correspond with that we think we should, just imagining what that's going to be like makes us think there's this big span of time we have to carve out for that. Right? Like I need to set aside a half an hour or an hour or even longer to do something like that. When in fact, short intervals of time, like what was that thing we just did?
That was 4.5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, those short intervals of time are scattered throughout everyone's day. And we often just fritter them away doing things that are not particularly constructive. But just imagine if you're at work and you say, I'm just going to fire up this thing and just close my eyes and listen in my cube, if you happen to work in a cube, for a few minutes and let that happen. It creates a different kind of environment and a different kind of association with being in that space, right? If the only feelings you have in a given space in your work life are feelings of stress and deadlines and I gotta get this done and I'm behind and that kind of thing, well, that's a pretty unhappy thing just to go there, right? But if you can create different kinds of associations with being in that place, because you spend moments of time, 4.5 minutes or whatever it happens to be, just listening, just letting your mind wander and think, you create a different kind of expectation about what it's going to be like when you go there. I mean, I think many of us who find ourselves in stressful environments think the only option in making ourselves feel better about them is to escape or don't go in them in the first place. But many of the places that we go are inescapable, right? We have to go to our jobs, we have to go to whatever place we need to go, where we have sort of responsibilities that we have to meet. And allowing ourselves time in those spaces to create a different kind of mood, a different kind of feeling, by devoting our attention to something that doesn't have a particular end goal associated with it, creates a different kind of environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting to see that, because you can do the same thing with the length of a song. You pick your favorite song, wake up to that to start your day. And you've already set yourself on a path to be a little more mindful. How many people, I know it's going to be everybody, check their phone when they wake up? Raise your hands. It's okay. We won't shame you. I do too. Or use your phone as your alarm. It's right there. Use it as an alarm, right? So right there, instantly you got notification stuff, bam. You just added stress to your day. You started your day by inferring and reacting. because you have to infer and react. You have to do that on anything as opposed to that. That's why there's those, apps that have a slow wake up and things like that are away or things out of the room. But you're instantly creating stress and anxiety in that space. And so it's about figuring out ways to be more mindful for yourself, to use this tool that not a lot of people are at. And that's why the campaign, this whole thing is called Take Back Your Imagination, because it's running away from you. You need to grab it back and consciously start using it. And it's going to give you a different value on life. It's fantastic. So what do you think about the idea of, with the brain and these aspects of what we're talking about here, on how anxiety fits into this? Because I hear a lot of that, and I want to get into something else about with the youth and other areas.
Yeah. Well, let me say a couple things about stress. I mean, as our species evolved, our reactions to stress were very adaptive. I mean, that's why our species is still around, right? But when there were stressors in our environment, they were literally physical threats to our existence, right? And the stressors were always relatively short-lived because you either escaped the predator or you didn't, but either way the stress was over, right? So now, because we have imaginations that we sometimes use to our detriment, you alluded to this a little bit before about thinking all the bad things that can happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We can maintain stress over long stretches of time that our bodies did not evolve to accommodate, right? I mean, usually we think all the stress responses are to give us a chance of escaping and getting somewhere safe as quickly as possible. But if you're under stressors that don't go away because you're thinking about them often or all the time, and they don't go away, your body is reacting in a way that it was never intended to react over a sustained period of time. And that all the health consequences that go along with that are things that we experience all the time with hypertension and atherosclerosis and stroke and heart disease and all those kinds of things are all related to in some way, not solely, but in some way related to ongoing stress.
Yeah, and then the anxiety portion of that,
Well,
which kind of attaches itself to it in a way,
Sure.
right? Because you're thinking about the stressors,
Right.
You're psyching yourself out, you're putting yourself into that aspect of it. So you're letting your imagination take a hold of your fears. You're letting your imagination get away with you. When you can just stop, and it's not easy, but say, no, that's not right. Like,
yeah.
stop this.
I think one way to take some solace in this is people who are really stressed usually have really good imaginations. Because nobody could get to a doomsday scenario that creatively, without thinking, well, I'm 5 minutes late, and then by the time you're done imagining the situation, you're in prison. So if you think about all those steps along the way, that's a version of creativity that's not necessarily used to your advantage. And I think one of the things that Dave has emphasized in our conversations and what we're doing with this audio tool today is allowing yourself not to go to a particular place. And that to me is so much unlike what most of our day-to-day experiences are, because most of our day-to-day experiences, we're trying to get somewhere, either in our heads or in a work task, or physically trying to get from one place to another. And having an opportunity, even if it's 4.5 minutes long, to not have to be anywhere is valuable just on its face.
Yeah, and I want to ask you guys, for the audience, raise your hand. Sorry, I like the hand thing. I volunteer in the education space. I work with kids all day. It's fine. We're not going to do a sing-along, so don't worry. But I'm curious, for those of you that listened to it, did it feel, raise your hand if it felt like it was way shorter than 4 minutes. Okay, raise your hand if you felt it was way longer, like you were out. Okay, it's very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're terrible judges of time, particularly time that doesn't have anything in it, right?
Yes.
And I think one of the challenges of mindfulness training, when people try to think about just slowing yourself down and concentrating on your breathing and those kinds of things, is people who are used to pretty constant stimulus changes in their environment, either coming from a device or from just being around lots of different people, find the initial experiences of that excruciating, because I feel like I've been here for an hour and a half and it's been 3 minutes, but I never spent 3 minutes with nothing in it. And one approximation of getting to a place where your mind and your emotional system will tolerate longer periods of inactivity is to fill it with things that sort of you allow to wash over you, right? You're not expecting anything in particular, you don't, and I'm repeating myself now, you don't have a particular goal you're trying to accomplish, but it's actually setting a time limit for you, right? And there are options these, I don't know what the longest one of these is.
In the content we created, there's ones that are 15 minutes long,
Yeah.
and they range. I mean, they're not all freaking crazy sci-fi.
Yeah. And like most things, you know, I think when you make decisions about what individually you find satisfying, because one of the things about choosing music to listen to or choosing an Audiojack to listen to, I mean, they're different, they have different settings, they have different moods, they suggest different kinds of things. And when you find things, I like that one a lot. Well, there's something about the familiarity of coming back to that that's pleasing as well, right? And again, when you listen to something repeatedly, you know when you listen to songs that you've listened to countless times and you've heard the same thing many, many times, you start to think different things about them, right? Your thoughts aren't always the same every time. And that's with songs, which often have lyrics, and they've had their own story. Well, here's something that has no lyrics, doesn't even have a tempo, doesn't have a story, and you get to create a story, or not. Mm-hmm. And that's a different kind of experience that we don't often take advantage of.
So we're going to open this up to questions for all you guys, because I know you probably want to ask a lot of different stuff here, but what I want to kind of point out is not reference just to this tool or anything like that, but dealing with something that has no direct narrative, being told something. You're not being told, okay, this is a song about a car, it's this thing sung by this guy. You know, having something where you have total control over it. Where's the value in that on that psychological level, the way we learn? And how does that affect the brain? That's what I'm really curious about, is how that affects you and why it's valuable in relation to the aspect of imagination and be able to, something that we can all do here, why I feel that.
Well, I mean, if you think about most of your life in school and probably much of your life and much of your work, you're responding to instructions that are given to you by other people. And in fact, many people who get really good at school, that's their skill. Right? Is that I'm really good at following instructions and doing assignments correctly and making sure my name is on this part of the paper after I fold it in half and turn it in and those kind of things. And school rewards that a lot. And even though you might have creative writing assignments from time to time in school and those kinds of things, when you think about what the most pleasing experiences that most of us have, there are often experiences where we generate something on our own. And not in response to something else, but just on our own. And we don't have enough opportunities to practice doing that. Not because they can't be found, but we don't avail ourselves of them. And this is one opportunity to do that, right? To generate something on your own that's not instructed by somebody else, it's not directed by somebody else, but something that allows you to sort of create something in a way that one typically doesn't do in a typical day.
And is there value to making it your own?
Sure. I think we all like the things that we like, and we usually like the things that we create.
Well, I mean with the imagination, because your imagination, you're making it your own. It gives you that sense of creativity, because you might be in a place where you're like with the boss who's a jerk, and they're always telling you you're wrong, you have to do this, you have to do this, or you're with someone who's always telling you what to do. But in this place, it gives you the ability to take your stress and anxiety and put it aside.
Yeah, sure.
Because you're creating your own environment with anything.
Yeah, even the bosses who keep telling you you're right, they're okay too. It's not just the ones who are
Yeah. So now what I want to do, because we only have a little bit of time left, I want to see if there's any questions out there in the audience about this, about these elements of it, about the imagination, and that we can, kind of facilitate discussion too as well, and things you want to talk in this respect. If you have questions, raise your hands, and I'll point you. I'm just going to go from. Okay, how about you right there? Yeah. What's your name?
I'm Erin.
Erin? Hi, Erin.
I just had a quick question. What specific populations would you use this tool with?
Well, that's interesting. My answer, which a lot of people hate, is everyone that can hear, because it's actually that. It's used in school programs with writing programs, and we've done studies in that area. There's a study done with a couple hundred students, and they did a creative writing exercise, and then they were graded against a 6-point rubric. Then the same students 2 days later did one of these exercises, a writing exercise. They listened to it once, listened to it a second time, brainstormed, and kept writing the story and turned it in. Their grades went up by 8% against the same standard. That same test was done with non-native English speakers. Their grades went up by 22%. Because you have this, you're not going to be wrong. We reverse engineer the learning process. So they do the activity, then after it's done, hey, here's all the skills you just used. Instead of saying, I want you to use all these skills to go do the work, you're creating stress and anxiety that way. This way it becomes a reward mechanism. So it was used in the education space. It's used with blind organizations. People going through chemotherapy and dialysis use it because you close your eyes. You're not looking around at everyone else wondering, oh my God, is that going to be me someday? You're not thinking about it, you're somewhere else. It's used with, we have a World Wildlife Partnership and the Humane Society. We have a wildlife section, it gives you direct empathy. So you feel like you're the animal in different situations, whether it's good or bad. We work with memory loss and dementia now, and we're working in that. Actually, it's so funny. I ran into someone who I was at a conference at last week about that. And it's being used in studies with that, and getting full recall from people. Because have you guys seen the studies where they have people listening to music from their generation, and then all of a sudden they have recall, and they're like, oh my God, I'm back there again. Okay, imagine if you could hop into that scene with them. So you play this over a speaker, and you feel like you're in the moment. There's a whole day in the life section. There's all these different categories, and all of a sudden you feel like you're there. So it's used in all those areas. And the really neat thing about sound design is there's no language barrier to contend with. If I break a glass, it doesn't go le break in France. Like, it's the same shit. You know, you break it anywhere. And I've traveled around the world. We're just blind sighted people in Israel. We have programs in India, Germany, China. Everyone uses the same thing because of that. So it can be used in all different areas. And for just entertainment. You know, do it a game night. But or you do it with a song, or you do it with something else. Yes, you right there, sir?
You're creating these, everyone's having totally different perspectives on what they're imagining, but when you're putting it together, what are you thinking about when you're putting these different pieces together? Because you have some idea in mind.
Correct.
And you're building that sound design about something, but everyone else is breaking it apart. So
yeah.
What's inspiring you on these things?
It's a lot of different things. It's an aspect of a story that I want to create. I mean, during Halloween, we make Halloween ones. We do things like that. There's different elements of it. And we never tell you what it is. So there's never a wrong answer. So it's whatever you want it to be. And so it could be different things. Like when we work with the World Wildlife Fund, with the Humane Society, you know, we'll think about a campaign. We did one for blood lions. There was a whole campaign in, I think it was probably right after it was when they had reserves where people were actually raising lions just to be hunted. And there was a whole thing on that. So we created one to kind of put people in that experience and let them know what it's like. So it really varies on it. So it could really be anything. Yes, Matt.
Hi, thank you for it. That was great. I'm Pat with Baltimore School for the Arts, and I'm curious if it seems like this applies a lot to like creative writing and that sort of genre of sort of creativity, imagination. But have you applied it and done any studies in regards to other art forms? And a second part of that is, have you also looked into or been working and seeing how this applies to sort of haptic systems?
It's what systems? Sorry.
Like haptic, like the vibrating systems, like translating that for people who may be hard of hearing, or
sure,
you know, two sort of separate questions, but
yeah. And with the haptic thing, we've worked with Perkins School for the Blind. They also have a deaf program as well, and we work with them when we turn it up, and you can feel different elements of it. They're going to get different things from the story on that. And what do you think about that, about the hapticness and affecting imagination in that capacity?
Well, I mean, our memories are activated by whatever senses we can perceive, right? So, I mean, there's nothing unique about an auditory cue versus a visual cue versus a haptic cue. I mean, all of those things can stimulate the recall of certain memories, and that sort of plays into building imaginative ideas, whatever they happen to be.
Yeah, and we haven't done other studies of that. There's other ones that are rolling out now. We have ones with gerontology all the way to people doing artwork and using it in those areas. And that was actually the first place that it started with. My mom was a teacher for 22 years. I volunteered in that space, and we decided to try it within our class, and that's how it all started. And the results were amazing. Like, every kid wanted to participate, and it was like, holy shit, like, this works. And the teachers loved it because they were reaching students in a new way. You had a question here in front?
Yeah. What tools would you offer to people who don't think they have what it takes to take control of their imagination?
Okay. She was asking, what tools would you offer people to do that? Like, what would you think, Bob?
You're looking at me.
I am. I think, what tools would you do? What do you got to imagine?
Well,
I mean, I think I've got ideas too, but I'm curious on what you think.
Yeah,
I think,
and let me sure I understand some question. People who don't think they can take control of their imagination, or don't think they have an
Or just
imagination?
like take control of their thoughts in general.
Yeah.
Because that can be a serious thing. And
It is.
When you have anxiety, it's hard to think that you actually are in control
Right.
of your thoughts.
Yep.
So just tools to offer people. When they
Well, I think if you go to a good therapist, right? I mean, one of the things that someone will guide you through is, first of all, thinking about what actually is activating whatever anxieties are coming in your head, and then seeing if it's possible to shift your focus to other things in your life experience that you may be totally ignoring because you're so focused on these things that are creating anxiety. I mean, I think that's a common practice that's usually effective in many cases. Now, some people for whom there are really serious anxieties that are difficult to let go of, there may be other therapies, including medications, that help them move to a different place with that. But I think one of the challenges in helping anybody who's suffering some really debilitating anxiety, right, is first finding places where they can have a sense of calm. And I think, when you're just telling people to sit quietly, that's pretty demanding, right? But when you're having them listen to something like this, which there is something to respond to here, it's not like nothing, right? So now their minds can focus on something, but it's not allowing the rapid iteration of the same negative thoughts that kind of start spinning in somebody's head that they would otherwise.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's go. Yeah, you.
So you've been talking a lot about how imagination can be used as a muscle and we need to exercise it, but what would you recommend doing to try to make that a habit that we're like constantly exercising instead of just occasionally disconnecting and imagining?
Well, I think it's building it into your schedule. I think it's really taking time to set parameters for yourself and saying, okay, I want to work this out. Just like if you wanted to run a race, you have to kind of commit to that and run a little each day. Okay, every day after work, I'm going to go walk a block. Then I want to do this. And setting that as a part of your schedule, because our days can get away from us very easily. But if you say, set a reminder in your phone, set a thing and say, okay, I'm going to do this every day at that point. And then you'll form a habit around it. And it's finding ways to create a habit for yourself in that element instead of just, doing it. Maybe link it to something else that you already do. If you do go to the gym, say, okay, I'm going to do this on the treadmill for 5 minutes and feel like I'm supposed to hold on. Or if you think about, I might drive to work or something. Obviously, don't close your eyes if you're driving. But if you're doing that, you can listen to it too. And I think finding things that are already existing in your life and link it to those elements and kind of put it together will give you that opportunity. Yes, sure, right there.
So can you tell us a little bit of a difference between daydreaming and imagination, and is there a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. Daydreaming and imagination are different and similar in the same capacity. They're different, but one is a part of the other. You're using your imagination as a part of daydreaming. Because while you're daydreaming, you're sitting there and you're thinking about these concepts and your mind is firing in that same capacity, you have to use your imagination. Essentially, imagination is a really nice word for converging memories, I think is a good way to look at it, is converging memories. And so you're taking memories in real life and combining them together in that thought, in that spot. It's a really nice word for it. So imagination is a part of it. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive by any means. The gal in the back over here, and then we'll swing this way. Yeah.
I downloaded your app. It's super cool. And I noticed there's some experiences that seem like they'd be really calming, like Sunday morning, but then there's also the Civil War and World War II. So I'm wondering how what the intention is to use, like how you decide which experience to use, and also how you go about deciding what type of experiences to create.
Sure. Those came from our work in education as it took off in that area. And then the Sunday morning is what we use with the memory loss and dementia patients. And when a new program gets on board, we'll say, hey, here's a couple ones that you want to work from in that life section. And that one, we actually had people having full recall. We had, in the middle of the session, the last one I did, a nurse left in the middle of it when everyone was sharing their stories. And when we debriefed, she's like, I left because I was crying because the woman that was talking about the family dinner hasn't done a complete sentence in 6 weeks. And she was right there in the moment. It felt like she was having dinner, and I wish her family could have been there to talk to her about this and be there because they could have relived that experience again. And the reason why we have that whole history section with like World War II and stuff, which can create a little stress, was because history teachers kept reaching out to us, and they were talking about the fact that they see a disassociation in learning of people with race associated to moments in history. When you're dealing with certain moments, people see, oh my God, I'm a slave, or I was treated this way, or I was whatever. When I say World War II, I'm Jewish, and so I connect differently to that moment, these other elements of it. But when you do something where there's no visual construct in it, you reduce the stress level. So someone can feel like, whoa, I was in the middle of the Boston Tea Party. I was in the middle of that moment, and you can connect to the education. They can teach better that way. They found there was a way to reduce the stress and anxiety that was happening. And we want people to know, yes, this stuff really happened. We're not trying to say it never did, believe me. But what we are trying to do is give people another way to buy in, to connect with their imagination that isn't stressful. Because school is already stressful as I can't even imagine what it's like for kids now with everything going on. We're not going to go there. But yeah, next question. Okay, you, and then we'll go that way. Yes.
Okay. So based on the description of this seminar, I definitely expected VR to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to get your thoughts. It's at everything in the trade show. I felt like there was a VR element.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're at a very pivotal point to use that for good.
Sure.
But what I'm interested to hear your thoughts on if you think VR is helping or hurting imagination at this point.
That's a great question. She was asking about VR. She thought it'd be integrate this in some capacity. I want to hear your thoughts too. I've got one thing I want to say real quick.
If it's helping or hurting
Your imagination.
your imagination,
I think it's helping in a way, but it's also your imagination is your ultimate VR. You just did there's VR that's fantastic, but what you just did is the high level VR. You just mainlined VR by using your imagination. And
no, I was just saying, for all of you who read Harry Potter before the movies came out, right? You had to imagine lots of stuff when you're reading the book and about what everybody looks like and how tall Harry is and all those kind of things that happen. And then you see the movie, you don't have to imagine anything because the producers imagined it and they put it on the screen for you, right? So it's okay, it's fine, because sometimes showing things either through VR or just actually experiencing things spurs other aspects of your memory that your imagination on its own might not have come up with. But I don't think it's a matter of book versus movie versus virtual reality, because in any one of those levels there is room for imagination. Right? In every one of those levels there are opportunities for your brain to assemble things in such a way that you've not considered before.
yeah, I think so. I think VR can help, but it's also one of those things. It's like, if you take medication for a problem, that's good, but you should have therapy with it. Like, there's amazing VR programs out there that have AR added to them. Like, you participate and you're imagining you're in the world, and you're right there with that artist or that band, and you're right there with them in the moment, and that's really helpful, and that's a great tool. But then there's the other ones. I saw, I was at the conference I was referring to, the Aging to the Future, what we saw with seniors using VR, it'll help them. They hated having this on their head. They hated being trapped in this space. With this, you can shift any way you want. With VR, you're being told it's this way. So it can create either way, and I think it depends on how it's being used. And we have time for 2 more questions, and then unfortunately we have to wrap it up. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right. 2 more questions. Who wants to be last? We have one over here. You had one? Yes.
I have one.
Yeah.
I have a question. So let's say you kind of get in the habit of using this tool on a regular basis. What do you think would be a productive step? Should you be talking about your outcomes kind of like we did as a group? Should you then immediately go into your creative endeavor? Is there something that you can kind of then do next to better kind of grow?
Absolutely. It's like, what do you do with it, right? Well, in there are activities to do. There's writing activities, art activities, and other things like that. But what do you think about that? About whether it's with this or with music or VR?
Yeah.
How do you activate that in a more intense?
I think one of the things that happens when you actually set aside time to just let your mind go a little bit, even responding to something or just even be quiet, you find that over time you become better able to bring that into your thinking at will, right? So when you think about doing something like this, like listening to an Audiojack, having a few moments to respond to that, and you have a writing task that you want to do, I don't think there are any data yet about whether that would actually make your writing easier or that kind of thing. But I think many people who want to be creative imagine creativity in a way that creativity really doesn't work, meaning that something gets fully formed in your head and then it comes out. When actually writing is part of the creativity, and part of creativity is you write a lot of junk that turns into something good over a long period of time. There are a few, some people still insist that Mozart just wrote a whole symphony in his head and then just wrote it down. But I think that even if that were true, it's a rarity. And I think most of us who are creative in any way go through a process that involves not feeling like everything that's coming out of you has to be good as it's coming out, right? And one of the things about something like the Audiojacks, right, is that there's no assessment, there's no evaluation of whether you're thinking of a good story or not. It doesn't make a difference, right? You're just thinking. And I think many of us who are creative and want to be creative, I think the insistence on having a product at a certain period of time works against creativity. Even though many people write on deadline, They have deadlines that they need to meet. But this kind of thing where you say, look, I'm going to take 4.5 minutes, 11 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever the thing happens to be, and I'm just going to let my mind go, you actually develop the capacity to do that more easily over time.
Yeah. I think we have time for maybe one more. If not, I know there are tons to wrap it up. Anyone else? My closing thoughts, it's really funny that we've gone down this path talking about imagination and everything. I wrote a note to myself and I just wanted to double check that I actually did write it. It's really funny and it's all about, it's a matter of giving yourself time to do it. To give yourself time for your imagination. It's this thing. It's a dog that needs to be let out of the house. It needs to go in the yard. It needs to play. Right? I mean,
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about playing, but
I know. Well, yeah. Or else it's gonna shit all over your house, and you're gonna have. I mean, let's go that metaphor. If you don't, it's gonna shit all over your brain, and you're not gonna be having any fun. You know, it's like it's that element of it. Like you gotta let it out. You gotta let it be. You know.
so you can see when you have an imagination.
Yeah, exactly. That's really what it's about. It's about finding time. The whole point of why they asked me to come out here is because I work with imagination at such a level, and I want to just talk to more people about it and say, look, we have this great tool. You all have it. Use it. Please use it. Inspire other people to use it. Do something with it. It's there. It helps you. It can help reduce your stress when you learn to harness it and work with it. And it's an amazing thing you can bring to other people and really help evolve. So take back your imagination. Don't let it get away.
Thanks a lot.